Ladies and gentlemen, this is Scott Pollock coming to you from the anchor desk of the Critical Post Chicago. Welcome to another Critical Post Chicago report. Thanks again for tuning us in, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is still the only anchor desk in the world not enforcing the blackout about who murdered the President of the United States in 1963. And this is not old news, ladies and gentlemen. You should be clamoring and climbing the walls, demanding that they unseal, unredacted the entire episode of what happened in November of 1963. The American Republic is still reeling from that trauma. This country will be lawless until such time happens. And that's only the beginning of a returning of a rule of law in the United States. And it's a terrible situation. Ladies and gentlemen, in my last broadcast, I said that I was going to do a broadcast about something known as front-loaded predictive analytic opinion consensus technology. And I was going to explain to you how that is used. Part of it is derived from the Rand Corporation's Delphi method, and the other part of it is derived from the admissions by the Dutch banker Ronald Bernard. But considering the audience's attention span, what I'd rather do is find the people that are interested in that kind of a report, and I will provide a private link explaining it to those people. You could subscribe to that broadcast by sending a message to this anchor desk at the Gmail address of thecriticalpost@gmail.com. If you're interested in how the propaganda operates, again, you can email this anchor desk at thecriticalpost@gmail.com. And I'll provide a private link broadcast to those people who are interested in that broadcast rather than put it into the general population use on YouTube. Most people won't get it, so I'm not going to do it. Over the last 2 months, going on, which will go on 2.5 months, I've been following a number of internet feedback loops regarding this cartoon pandemic known as COVID-19. I called Fort Detrick and found out that the images that are being transmitted around the internet, I asked the press relations office how many patients did they derive those samples from that they looked at under transmission electron microscopes. And their immediate response was one patient. One patient. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not sufficient. Now, the reporting and the investigation into pandemics and how they're being used is best reported and best understood by John Rappaport, who's an investigative reporter whose website, nomorefakenews.com, has been in operation since the year 2001. So if everybody's wondering where fake news, the moniker fake news, comes from, it can most easily be reported that that phrase came from John Rappaport. And he should be credited with that. Just so you understand, fake news came from John Rappaport. Now, he's done a great job of explaining how the CDC, the WHO, the medical community, and an intelligence operation inside the CDC uses pandemics and the spread of pandemics to spread what can only be described at this particular point in time as medical incarceration and medical terrorism. I became aware of John's work and have looked at it and read the articles about it at Catherine Austin Fitz's website, and I'm going to bring that up for you here so you can see it, where you can find this research. I was going to do an extensive report, but I don't think anybody does a better job of explaining it than John Rappaport over at Solari.com. So all you have to do is go to Catherine's website and take a look at into the search box, and you can put a search in there up at the corner here. I'll highlight it. As you can see, up at the corner, it says John Rappaport. And when you search that, you will find the search results. And the name of the report is The Creation of a False Epidemic. So that is how I learned about it. And I made recordings of it in case this stuff disappears off the web. And so what I'm telling you is if you're interested in that kind of reporting, the one that's done the best job of it is John Rappaport. I don't think any reporter in newsdom right now understands the subject better than him. So go to Solari.com, put in the search box John Rappaport, and you will find these videos that Catherine put on her YouTube channel. And you can listen to them right there. Nobody does a better job than this. But the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, what I'll tell you is that the scientific method that is being used to determine whether somebody has this virus or disease or whatever you want to call it is faulty. Part of it is X-ray, part of it and looking for upper respiratory disease, part of it is done with the PCR form of testing, which does not necessarily conclude that something is this pandemic. And that's the bottom line. They didn't line up 15 people or 20 cases or 35 cases or 50 cases and take cultures or take samples from 50 cases and compare them next to each other. They didn't do this with a transmission electron microscope. So how did they know anything other than jump into conclusions? So I urge you to listen to what John Rappaport has to say rather than me going into it here and plagiarizing his entire work. He deserves the credit for having done this. Catherine Austin Fitts deserves the credit for putting it up. And that's what I have to say about that. Now, in addition, ladies and gentlemen, to the headlines that are still in effect from the April 27th, 2020 Critical Post Chicago report, there are more headlines to add to that queue. And I'm going to add, when this YouTube is posted, this YouTube broadcast is posted, I'm going to add all of the operating headlines to date. None of them have changed. But there are new headlines. And the new headlines are as follows. Headline: American news audiences continue to be distracted by political propaganda, and the latest football is the cartoon virus. Headline: China being advertised in the PR channels as the new model of government for the world. Headline: Worldwide vaccination program is the latest PR being tested on the world stage by news platforms all over the planet. Headline: Concentrations of food supply chain power being forced into an ever smaller corporate transnational elite, and national franchise brands might be the only kinds of restaurants that are left. Will independent mom and pop restaurants continue to survive? Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to switch over now to the Goldwater report, because I'm going to offer an editorial about the Ronald Bernard interview by DVM-TV.com. Stay tuned in this broadcast for the Goldwater report. If you're still with me, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. Here's the Goldwater report. In our last broadcast, we aired the uninterrupted interview of Ronald Bernard, a retired Dutch strawman banker as broadcast by DVM-TV.com. Now, most people did not bother to stay tuned for the entire length of the interview and read the interpreted subscript. The average length of the minutes listened was approximately 15 minutes of 3 hours total in the broadcast content. Over 50% of the people watched what little they saw on a smartphone device. They did not get the information, in other words. The attention span did not go that far. Only about 5 to 7% of the people listened to the whole thing. And it was important to listen to everything this man had to say. So here's the bullet points, ladies and gentlemen, just so you understand what we're dealing with here. Mr. Bernard is a surviving witness of satanic ritual practiced by the world's banking upper hierarchy, of which there's about 8,500 individuals involved. He testifies they're sacrificing children, and to date, he's the only person this anchor desk knows of whom has come forward with any degree of perceived credibility. That there are designated parcels of land in every country wherein international banking exists, and their banking operatives using the SWIFT systems, and that anything that goes on within the boundaries of those parcels are completely immune and stand above all laws anywhere in the world by any government. That the clandestine services organizations are spy agencies of the world's governments, and the governments themselves are merely tools for this banking hierarchy, and they, along with their bankers or bank administrators or traders, are the biggest criminals on the face of the globe. It can be inferred, ladies and gentlemen, that in fact the President of the United States is kept in an information bubble of nefarious design, and that the President is only informed of anything on a need-to-know basis. Therefore, the office of the President here in America is completely useless to anyone other than to aid in the world's control paradigm by the upper hierarchy of central banking and their personnel. And that all criminal activity on behalf of the governments of the world is coming from the clandestine services organization, human trafficking, drug sales, sales of children for sacrifice. And Mr. Bernard testifies to that. So it's no longer any guesswork, ladies and gentlemen. This is happening. It's ugly, and nobody wants to know about it for the reason that some might think is because we can't do anything about it. It can also be inferred, ladies and gentlemen, that America's military is complicit in the exercise by a far-reaching overall collusion with the operators of the world's central banking cartels and the transnational corporations that benefit from all this criminal activity. And that's why In the April 27th, 2020 broadcast of the critical post-Chicago report, I proclaimed the headline that the rule of law has been completely suspended for the entire world in the year 2020. But rather, in fact, it's been going on for our entire lifetimes. The only thing that's unmasking it is the fact that independent people, some who are journalists and some who are not, are becoming aware of this because of the internet if they know where to look. The problem with this kind of reporting, ladies and gentlemen, besides the fact that it is ugly to recognize that child sacrifice is happening, is that the people that are involved with the transmission of this kind of contest in any kind of broadcast medium, the discipline required is lacking. Investigative journalism reporting is not being adhered to. They're just merely going off and saying something. Well, that's not what this anchor desk does. Now, I don't know where we can find another witness other than Ronald Bernard to corroborate Ronald Bernard's story. But I rather think that his testimony is enough. So the headline that America's military is failing to protect the American population from crimes and enemies, both foreign and domestic, are not doing their job, and they are violating their oaths. This is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. The chief law enforcement officer of the United States is the president and his Department of Justice in the executive branch. And yet, we know at this point in time from the testimony of Ronald Bernard that the clandestine services organizations of every government on the face of the earth are in the business of human trafficking for child sacrifice, illegal drug sales, illegal arms sales, and all kinds of other things is continue to going on. This is a wag the dog scenario. And the American people are entirely befuddled. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, the political party franchise operations in the United States of America is no way to address this. If the President of the United States is on strictly a need-to-know basis, then what's to be done? What's to be done? How is the President of the United States being threatened? Who is going to save the world and the world's people from this kind of activity propagated by the world's banking cartels for their satanic worshiping operatives. Who's going to do this? The American military needs to invade every single piece of land where the World Banking Cartel under the Basel Accords operates and clean these people out. And private banking needs to be regarded as a public utility. Now, what's going to happen in the future, because 2 generations after mine are less informed than my own generation as to how to operate this government. And everybody in the United States has got a very bad habit. They continue to think that Democrats and Republicans are going to fix something. They aren't. Nor is the President of the United States. And I would posit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's going to take an elite group of American military personnel to go in and invade all of these parcels of land all over the world and all the major capitals of the world where these parcels of land exist, wherein all of this illegal activity is going on that is above the rule of law anywhere on the face of the globe, that it's going to take an elite group of assassins to get rid of these people. This is, and who is going to know whether or not this is taking place? The QAnon community is being led to believe that this is going on, that something is being done, when in fact what that operation is another psychological operation to keep everybody whom may be of the mind to use their lead-spitting rifles and sidearms as a means to cause any kind of change. It's just to keep them safe allegedly. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, unless somebody owns a fleet of very sophisticated jet fighters, any kind of insurrection, by arms or otherwise, cannot take place. They'd be annihilated. This is a sad state of affairs. Now, the president, right now, the president of the United States, right now, has participated, along with all the governors of the face on the face of the planet in the United States, have participated in slamming 30 million people into unemployment by virtue of shutting the country down. And the QAnon community says, where we go one, we go all. You bet, right into the crapper. Nothing is being done. The President of the United States is not taking care and protecting the people of the United States. He's in a catch-22 situation. He's in a trick bag. He bowed to political pressure from the CDC to convince the governors of the country to shut down the American economy, when in fact we're going to find out in the months to come exactly how bad this was for the rest of the country, and not just a bunch of patients whom seem to have died, comorbidities aside, seems to have died from an upper respiratory illness known as COVID-19. So the needs of the few outweighed the needs of the many, to put it in Spockian terms. This is unacceptable. And the Republicans and Democrats alike are all part of the exercise, and yet, what can you do about it? Vote? The American military is absent. And until we start to see some credible news source that is saying that this is being addressed by the American military, that these people are being rounded up and put on trial for everybody to see, just like the Nuremberg trials, you will have no confirmation that anything along the lines of returning to the rule of law is happening. And I'm telling you, for those of you who don't believe that Ronald Bernard said this, that child sacrifice is happening. And for those of you who sit still and think that the American military somehow, somewhere, is addressing this issue without there being some credible news source, some anchor desk somewhere that is getting prima facie evidence that this kind of activity is being addressed and it's being done away with. It's going to continue. And as a matter of fact, it probably continues every week of the year. And that's the sad state of the lawlessness of the world. In America, supposedly the most free country on the face of the globe. How free are you now? 30 million Americans are out of work. How many businesses are going to be able to re-employ 30 million Americans? Most of them all who've been laid off, not furloughed, laid off, collecting unemployment. Is there any doubt that communism is the rule of the day? Is there any doubt that the antitrust divisions of the world are not doing their job? These transnational corporations need to be reined in. The world banking cartel needs to be reined in. This is not a good state of affairs. Now, you can sit there and call them all kinds of names. You can call them the Illuminati. You can call them Luciferians. You can call them Satanists. Whatever the case may be, Ronald Bernard says that there's child sacrifice going on, whatever sickness these people have. And where is the American military protecting us from this kind of tyranny? They don't work for us. We are in a very troubling time. Money missing from the federal government every day of the year. And no matter how much reporting goes on, there's no outrage. There's no outrage. People aren't standing at the steps of the House of Representatives demanding anything. Washington, D.C. is a bubble. It's the appearance of the rule of law. There is no rule of law. Not for them or their bankers. So where are you going? Where are we going to find this news? How will we know anything that the QAnon community is inferring that is going on? How are we going to know anything? Now, if anybody's got any tips out there, tell them to email this anchor desk at thecriticalpost@gmail.com. I'll take a look at it. Is there anybody in the American military that is part of these operations that could possibly corroborate anything that is going on? That the President of the United States is doing something about this as they believe. Look what just happened to the country. How can the President of the United States participate after building up the economy in shutting it down? How can that be trusted as being anything legitimate? How can you believe that the American federal government is here to protect you? It's not. And it's the governments of the world against their citizens. These conditions have not changed. Again, this is Scott Pollock from the anchor desk of the Critical Post Chicago. Thanks again for watching another Critical Post report and another Goldwater Report editorial. I'll be back soon. Good luck. That is all.